More than 2 weeks ago, Jackson, Mississippi saw severe flooding, and it was under a boil water order before that. Today, residents are still in need of safe drinking water. Now, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's watchdog is going to investigate the ongoing crisis, but that is not helping thousands of residents who are currently struggling without safe water. With us now is NBC News correspondent Zinhle Essamuah, live in Ridgeland, Mississippi. Hey, Zinhle.
Hey, Vicki, that's right. Residents here in Jackson are facing unimaginable circumstances. I arrived in the city last night and was handed bottles of water and a note that said boil water advisory, do not drink. And the reason was because this plant behind me remains unsafe when it comes to water. Here's what historians and residents have told me.
So I will be going scavenging for water today.
Deborah Bell is a Jackson, Mississippi native. We met her at a water distribution event.
That's what I do. I have to buy water.
Bell organizes most of her day around water, like many of Jackson's more than 150,000 residents. A boil water advisory up since July 30th. Still in effect nearly 2 months later. Deadly storms and flash flooding leaving households without running water. And while water pressure has returned, the water itself remains largely non-potable. Now, the Environmental Protection Agency has launched an inquiry into the water crisis, a probe into funding for and oversight over the water system. And while the government looks into just what went wrong, Jackson's residents are left going through extreme measures to keep their drinking water safe.
This is just water that I accumulated this week. This water here, I boiled it last night. It's ready to use for my cooking for today. Nothing but hot water, and then let it cool off so you can get you a bath.
Lifelong resident Bell says the issue is not new.
So this water has been contaminated for decades. The pipes has always been that way.
It's a problem historians like Dr. Robert Luckett say is rooted in white flight out of the city.
And I would pinpoint it really to 1969 to 1970. The Supreme Court declares that desegregation of public schools must begin immediately.
Luckett says as white people left the city, so too did investments in the city's infrastructure. Jackson today with a black population over 80% and nearly a quarter of its residents living below the poverty line.
The thing about the water system in the city of Jackson is that our system of pipes below the city are over 100 years old. Most of them are lead. The entire system needs to be replaced.
The Mississippi Health Department tells NBC there is not an estimate on when the boil water notice will be lifted. The mayor of Jackson saying in a press conference,
"We are in an ongoing state of emergency, even when we're not facing a boil water notice."
All while residents continue living through a sobering reality.
You got a choice between water, gas, food. What? It brings tears to my eyes to know that somebody may have gotten sick from drinking that water.
Frankly, it should be upsetting to everyone. 2022, this is an American city, and this is what we're seeing in terms of clean drinking water for hundreds of thousands of people. Zinhle, what is next, and why is the EPA not calling this an investigation and just an inquiry?
Yeah, Vicki, it really is unimaginable that this is happening. And apparently we could hear from the EPA as soon as this week in regard to the probe. Now, we did hear from city officials just this morning. They said they're still getting isolated reports of discolored water, and they cannot lift that boil water notice until they have 2 consecutive days of clear sampling. But clearly the city is not there yet. Vicki?
Zinhle, talk a little bit more about the fact that this is actually not the first rodeo for the EPA going to Jackson, Mississippi, looking into these issues. What's it going to take to fix them once and for all?
That's right, Vicki, and that's what makes this so difficult, right? So the EPA probed actually this plant right behind me, OB Curtis Water, in 2020, and they found inadequate staffing and also said that it was inoperable. Now, clearly, 2 years later, not much has changed, but residents are a bit more hopeful because this time the EPA Inspector General is looking into this. Now, why that matters is because this is the same person and the same agency that looked into the Flint water crisis. Now, as you'll remember, that led to 9 indictments, so there's hope for some change this time around. Vicki?
NBC News correspondent Zinhle Essamuah, thank you so much for your reporting there on the ground.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.